Cool. We're recording. So this is Brian Stecker from Boomer Fitness, and I have the honor today to be here with Dr. Dan Richie from West Lafayette at Miracles Fitness. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Awesome. So a lot of you guys know I've been showing you the applicable side of living a better life, being more functionally fit, and functionally age well. But I wanted to bring Dr. Dan Richie on here because he brings more of the science side and has inspired me to, in my gym, to give more of the applicable side and educate the why behind the what and then why we need to do it. So that's why we're talking today. One of the things is, Dan, could you share everybody what FA, Functional Aging Institute, is and how can it help people, or how you got started with it?
Yeah, so Functional Aging Institute's been around since 2013. We've now educated over 3,000 trainers and have certified functional aging specialists in 18 countries. Basically came about because a lot of fitness businesses were knocking on our door in 2010, 11, 12, saying, hey, what are you guys doing? How are you training seniors, right? And I use that term loosely. But how is it you're filling your gym with people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90-year-old clients? And so the more requests we had to sort of borrow our business model, we eventually were like, okay, we need to launch an institute, train trainers how to do this, and not just train trainers, but also give the business model and the whole tools. And so that's been kind of a cool thing that's come out of Miracles Fitness. We've trained over 2,500 clients, but now every day we're impacting over 5,000 clients a day through our several thousand trainers around the world. So that's kind of cool.
That's awesome. So I've been going to your conferences now for a long period of time here, and you've been really educating me on the science part of it, and that's part of the reason I wanted you to be on here. One thing that really fascinated me was you taught me the trajectory of aging. Can you talk a little bit about that for the viewers out there and what it means for them?
Yeah, I'll show you an image here in just a second, but really research more and more is showing us that our aging is really mostly up to us, right? And so a concept that actually came out of a World Congress on Aging back in the 90s is called the Functional Aging Trajectory Chart, or your functional capacity over your lifespan, right? And so we all know that we're born. We all know that we're eventually going to die. The question is, what does that trajectory look like, right? So I'm going to share on screen so you guys can see what we're talking about. And so the reality is we're all born, right? We're all going to die. So we're not talking about people living forever. The question is, if you're going to live to 100 or 90 or 85, what is that functional ability going to look like, right? And so I tell people, you want to be on the blue line for as long as possible, right? And you don't want to cross disability thresholds. And sometimes we think about this wrong. We think, oh, I don't want to live too long that I wind up in a nursing home. The reality is you can't really control how long you're going to live necessarily, right? You might live to 82 and wind up in a nursing home at 75. You might live to 92 and be completely independent. And so our goal really with aging trajectory is maintaining independence and preventing disability as late in life as possible, right? So that we can really do all the things we want to do, whether that's walking, playing with the grandchildren, mowing our own lawn, hiking, traveling, water skiing, downhill skiing, whatever it happens to be that you love to do, you want to be able to do that as late in life as possible.
Awesome. You kind of gave an example about this at one of your conferences where you were training guy in his 70s, or maybe it was a little later than 70s, and he wanted to go on this hike. And it kind of talks to this, is where you guys helped him get in great shape, and he was able to go hike through these caves, and hit the people that he went with that were younger weren't allowed. And
right.
Can you share that example?
Yeah. So, and for your younger listeners listening, right, sometimes people think, oh, this doesn't apply to me because I'm in my 50s, right? Or this doesn't apply to me because I'm in my 40s. It applies to you no matter what your age is, right? I mean, this chart that you're looking at here, you're somewhere on this, right? Whether you're 37, 47, 57, you're somewhere on this. So I tend to tell people in their 40s and 50s, hey, this middle life, this adult life portion is huge, because the higher your blue line is, the better off you're going to be later in life. And so you don't really have time to just say, oh, well, I'll get to it later, right? And so this guy's a classic example, right? He comes to us clearly in this third stage of life, right? He's clearly in this section we'd call older age, right? But he's still pretty high on the blue line. And he's like, I want to go hike the world's largest cave. It's called U Long Dong or U Dong Long. It's in Vietnam. Look the thing up. I'm telling you, Google the thing. Absolutely unbelievable pictures, right? You can house 747s in this cave. It's so big, wow. Right? And people will go down in there and they'll hike for days and camp for days. And well, the tour group had never had someone as old as 79 attempt this, and they were really nervous that he wouldn't be able to go. Basically, the cutoff is, hey, Brian, you really struggled with the jungle hike to get to the cave, so we're not going to let you go into the cave and basically, navigate that for 3, 4, 5 days because we're a little bit nervous you're not physically capable, right? Well, to get to the mouth of the cave is about a 10-mile hike in the Vietnam jungle. It's not, for beginners, right? I mean, it's rugged. It's really tough terrain. There's, the Vietnam jungle is notoriously dense. I mean, there's branches hitting you in the face, and it's not for the faint of heart. Unfortunately, the 79-year-old did all the training he needed to do so that he could master that hike, survived it with flying colors, but his 49-year-old son-in-law did not, right? And in fact, he had so much respiratory distress that when they got to the mouth of the cave, the tour group said, we're not going to let you go any further because your fitness, we're concerned about your health and your well-being. And the last thing you want to do is get down into this cave, far from medical attention and have an issue. And so unfortunately, they had what I call the most painful flight home, right? Like you got to fly home from Vietnam with your son-in-law and your grandson. And why you didn't get to go in the cave, and you're like, well, I prepared, I was ready to go. So it really gets to functional ability, right? And it's not just about age, but it's about your ability to function. And so here's a guy at 79 ready to go, and he's being held back because the 49-year-old wasn't prepared. So again, you could be in your midlife here, listen to this in your 40s or 50s. The take-home message is you got to be maintaining your highest possible level of function now, because it's going to impact you 10, 20, 30 years from now.
That's really powerful. And that kind of leads me to my next question. And then I went to one of your smaller conferences where it's more intimate and you bring other doctors in, other researchers in, and you busted out the hierarchy of aging. Uh-huh. And that really hit me because it reminded me of my grandfather, who was this strong, rugged farmer, was always active. And then at the end of his life, he retired from farming. He had some knee replacements. And then he, kind of became more sedentary. And then he got he got pneumonia. He came back from that pneumonia, and then he got hit with pneumonia again, and that wiped him out. So I was looking at my grandfather. He was fully fit.
Yeah.
Big, strong guy, never touched a weight, worked out in his life, just a farmer, baled hay. But I would say he was a fully fit guy. And then when he retired and he had his knees replaced, he was a lower independent individual. Like he could get on the tractor, move around, but it was tough. But then when he hit that pneumonia, he went down to frail. And then when he got hit again, it was like somebody pulled the light plug out and the energy left. He was at 8, and that's how he left. So I really want you to talk more about this, because I think a lot of people think, I feel good, I'm okay, I don't need to train. But understanding this radically changes the way you approach your training from a mindset in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. Could you talk more about this from the science aspect, the research side?
Yeah. So, about 20 years ago, Sperduso came out with this concept of the hierarchy of functional aging, and basically put people into 5 categories: the elite, the fit, the independent, the frail, and the dependent. And Cody and I, in the last couple of years, basically said, it's more variable than that. In fact, we show 8 levels. The reality is there's probably more like 15 to 16 levels, right? Like the elite athlete can probably be split into 2 categories, right? I don't even tell most people you should aspire to be the elite athlete. But you want to be in the upper half, right? So I say you want to be somewhere between 1 through 4, right? But fully fit, semi-fit, you're probably going to be okay to your very last days, right? When you start to slip into that higher independent and lower independent category, that's where you get in trouble, right? And so many older adults, 60, 70, 80 years old, they're fine, right? They're healthy, they're independent. Like if you look at the lower independent gal, right? This is sort of that typical grandmother. She's still cooking Thanksgiving for everybody. Everybody's coming over to her house, right? She's independent, right? But she's one illness or one injury away from frail, right? I mean, one major fall. I mean, I know you guys just had a massive snowstorm of like 2-3 inches, right? I mean, all it takes is that, right? I go out to get the mail, I slip, I fall, I break my hip, and I never recover from it, right? I go from lower independent to frail to now I'm dependent on someone else to help me cook and clean and take care of myself, and I'm considering a nursing home. And it literally happened overnight, right? It was the silliest of things. I went out and I slipped in my driveway, right? And so I tell people, you got to be in the semi-fit to fully fit category to weather the storms of life, right? Whether it's pneumonia or a major sickness or cancer or an injury or some moron hits you while texting, right? I mean, you're sitting at an intersection and somebody's not paying attention, their rear end you going 40, 50 miles an hour. How are you going to bounce back from that, right? Well, if you're fully fit, you'll bounce back. But if you're lower independent, you're going to wind up in that pre-frail or frail category and you're not going to recover from that. And so it's what Christian Thompson at our mastermind shared, right? It's like the reality is this picture, it's not a true blue line, right? Like I'm moving along into older age, doing great. And all of a sudden, boom, I have to have knee surgery, right? Or I have to have my knee replaced, right? And I go from the blue line to boom, I just drop down a whole level and I try really hard to get back, but I don't ever quite get back there. And then boom, I get some sort of illness. And so it's more of a jagged line. And so we tell people you have got to be working really, really hard to stay on that blue line so that you're staying in this top half, right? And if at any moment you think, you know what, I've slipped from semi-fit to higher independent, that means you need to get after it a little bit more. Maybe you need to start a new fitness program, right? I mean, I tell people, we have training clients here train with us 2-3 times a week, and they're like, do you think I should add yoga? Absolutely. Do you think I should add Pilates? Of course, right? I mean, like, there are more things you can be adding to maintain and increase your fitness level, and you have to be really cognizant of the fact that even though you feel like you're doing fine, it's sort of the mystique of our healthcare system, right, Brian? It's like, well, my doctor says I'm doing mostly good, right? Like, just keep taking your blood pressure meds, you're doing fine, right? You're not doing as fine as you think if you're not in this top half, right? And so you got to be maintaining your strength, your fitness, your mobility, all these things. You got to work hard at it, not just sit back and hope nothing happens to you, because something's going to happen to you, right? You know, so the reality is we're going to have accidents, we're going to have injuries, we're going to have illnesses, we're going to have something adverse come along. How quickly can you bounce back is really a determinant of how high your fitness level is.
So that leads to the next question kind of flows into this, where then, like, you came out to Boomer Fitness, you certified all my trainers. Thank you for doing that. You didn't have to do that. They loved it. And then actually somebody who wasn't at our gym came out to it, 74-year-old Paul, got certified, and now he's a trainer here doing this in his life, which led into what you talked about, the certification, was you talked about most people think, pump some iron, and then I'm going to walk on a treadmill. Can you share those different modalities? You had like a chart where it talked about balance, a cognitive function. This is the areas where people should be focusing in their training.
Yeah.
Can you talk on that a little bit? That was huge, where people can focus their training to get the most benefit based off those fears, to stay out of it, to stay in the proper hierarchy of aging.
Yeah. Yeah. You absolutely have to be trained in 6 different domains of function. And of course, each of those 6 has all these subcategories, right? And so we've tried to keep it simple and say, hey, there's a musculoskeletal piece, there's a neuromuscular piece, there's a cognitive emotional piece. That doesn't do me any good to maintain my muscular strength if I'm not maintaining my brain also, right? There's a mobility piece, a balance piece, and a cardiorespiratory. So strength is important, right? But if you notice, it's just one small piece way off in the corner. Walking is important, but a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I walk, right? I'm like, oh, well, that's nice, right? But it's not sufficient for maintaining function when you really look at a chart like this and you realize, well, walking might hit a little cardiorespiratory and a little mobility, a little walking gait, right? Walking doesn't maintain your coordination, your reaction time, your motor control, your proprioception, your musculoskeletal strength, your speed, your power. So it's just not sufficient, right? Just like strength training isn't sufficient. So we have to be more complex in our approach to training, especially when we're thinking about our lifespan, right? So it's like, well, what are all the things I have to be able to do, right? I mean, there's so many things we have to be able to do to function well as we age. And so we just want a more well-rounded approach.
That's awesome. So now that people are focusing on the right training modalities, I guess the next question is people think, well, how long would it take for me to really move up different levels? And you talked to me about the trans-theoretical model of change. Could you talk about, because that gives somebody in their mindset saying, okay, I'm committed to these, I'm committed to training. How long can I expect to get the benefits from this, Dr. Richie, where I can start moving up in these areas? Could you talk about that trans-theoretical model of change?
Yeah, so the trans-theoretical model is a great one for a video like this, right? Because somebody sitting watching is like, I don't even know if I'm thinking about exercising, right? You know, so the theoretical model of change is I'm not even thinking about it, right? Like, this is nice, you guys are doing this interview, but I'm not even thinking about exercising, right? And then the next step is, okay, you got my attention. I don't want to decline, so I'm thinking about it, right? To the next step is, okay, I'm past thinking about it. Now I'm going to do something, right? Like, it's what we call the preparation stage. That's where somebody comes in and meets with you, or they shoot you an email, Brian, and they say, hey, what's the program I need to do, right? Like, I'm ready to take action, right? And then we have the actual action taker, right? That's what we call the fourth stage in the model, where somebody is actually doing the behavior, right? They're consistently exercising, training, doing the lifestyle things. And our hope is that that becomes a long-term maintenance, right? So there's kind of two options. I become an action taker and I maintain that essentially forever, right? Because you should be exercising the rest of your life. Or I end it and I start the whole process all over again, right? It's sort of like I stopped exercising, now I'm back to not thinking about it, and I start the whole process again. And so we want people to take action. And once they take action, we want them to stay in that active behavior, right? Like, it's sort of like quitting smoking. I can think about quitting smoking, but until I actually prepare and take action, it doesn't really do me any good, right? And then when I take the action of quitting smoking, I have to maintain that action, right? Because if I pick up smoking again, like, there's no real health benefit to, I quit smoking for 3 days, right? Like, you don't see the benefit. So we need people to stay on this long term, which is why I actually show on this slide 30 sessions, 60 sessions, 90 sessions, right? So you start to notice the difference between the different trajectories is the quantity of sessions you do over time and your ability to stick with it, right? So we would like to see people doing 90 or more sessions per year and to stay there, right? You know, so at a minimum, 2 sessions a week, year after year after year. And of course, we do see more results, people that do 150 sessions a year, right? That's 3 times a week. So there's a consistency over time to it, right? Like, we don't get fit by thinking about it, right? We don't get fit by, you know, this is what people do, right? They try different gyms. They might do a 21-day program here or a 7-day challenge there, or, you know, a free gym membership for a month. You don't get fit doing that. You get fit with consistency over time. So if we're going to impact all these 6 domains of function, we've got to be doing 90 or more sessions a year, year after year after year.
That's powerful. And you inspired me to measure that more in my own facility. So when we see people dropping under a certain session amount per month, if they're getting under 13,
yep.
to that, like, for us, that sends an alert for us. If they're falling on a pace for less than 9 for a month, we're calling them and finding out, when are you going to get back in here for this? So we know that if you take 1 week off in your training, it's going to erase 4 weeks of what you did. So
yep.
This is something I really wanted to stress, because people think, I worked out, I'm fit, I'm good.
Right.
It really affects their trajectory of aging and then their hierarchy of aging. And then they wonder, I don't want people to have a surprise where they go to the doctor And the doctor's like, well, like Christian talked about, his mom's like, he had to drop his mom off because she fell a bunch of times in a retirement center. And she's like, I want to go home. And then my viewer or whoever's been watching this channel, they get there. I want them to avoid that for their family and for themselves, where they get dropped off. And she was like in tears because she couldn't go home. But he's like, but I can't let you go home, Mom, because if you fall again, you're done.
That's right. That's right.
So that this is powerful to make sure you have something to measure, which is number of sessions, training in these type of modalities. Awesome. And then kind of the last thing that I hear a lot of my clients kind of, this is tough to say, like age brings different thought processes. And I notice a lot of my 60 and 70-year-old clients are starting to see, they feel like the end is near. They can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And they have 3 fears, and you talked about this more in depth of just what I've heard, but you identified it, which was they fear cancer, some kind of cognitive issue, or heart disease. I think I just hit all 3 of those, the 3 fears. Cancer. Yeah. So can you talk about those myths of like those fears that people can live beyond 67 and they're not frail and they don't have to quit life now? Life's not over. They've got more to live for.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think a big piece of that is mindset, and I think a big piece of that is being healthy and fit. And so, if people are moving better, feeling better, more active, they're a little less afraid of some of those decline things. Now, the reality is, really, cancer is going to impact all of us, right? I mean, we're going to know someone with cancer. We're going to have a family member with cancer. It may or may not ever hit us individually. And certainly exercising, diet, nutrition has an impact on cancer. But you can be doing all the right things and still get cancer. I mean, you can literally say, man, I was doing everything healthy. In fact, Robert Linkle, I mean, this guy got cancer in his late 20s, early 30s. They think he was exposed to some sort of asbestos and it got into his lungs. And, he had to have like half of his lung removed. Here's a healthy, fit guy doing all the right things. So early in his life, he's got cancer. So the reality is, I approach it more from, you may have to face cardiovascular disease in your 70s or 80s. You may have to deal with a stroke. You may have to deal with cancer or a joint replacement. The question is, how are you going to deal with that adversity if you're not fit, right? Well, the reality is it's going to be a major challenge, right? All of a sudden, a stroke or a cancer. I mean, I have a client in his 80s who has prostate cancer, and they think he'll probably have it the rest of his life, right? He's had to have some treatment to deal with it, some minor surgeries, but he'll have a slow-growing form of prostate cancer the rest of his life. But he's not going to let it impact his ability to do the stuff he likes to do, right? He's going to keep training hard. He's going to keep exercising. He's going to keep doing all the stuff so he can continue to play with his grandchildren and garden. And the guy still goes out and harvests. He loves farming, and he's still working part-time, So the reality is we have to approach that with a mindset of, I can be as healthy as I can possibly be, right? And some of us, cancer is going to hit us. Some of us, it's not. Some of us, certain accidents are going to happen, right? Like, I don't know why it is that some people wind up in car accidents and other people don't. And, some people are accident prone, right? Like, I mean, I tore my ACL playing basketball of all things, right? So, and honestly, I'll probably injure myself again playing some sport with my kids, So, but I know I'll be ready to bounce back from it, right? And so, if we're training and doing all the things we need to do, then when those adversities come, we're ready for it. The other thing I'll say is, we have to realize that illness is not a necessary part of aging. That's why I say cancer can come to any of us at any age. It's not if I live to 70, I'm going to get cancer. That's actually not statistically true. So the reality is, we think the older you get, the more likely you are to get some sort of illness. And statistically, that's just not true. Now, certainly the longer we live, the more chance we have for dementia and Alzheimer's type. But again, that's illness. That's not normal or necessary aging. In fact, if we're doing all the things we need to do to take care of our brain, the likelihood of us getting Alzheimer's is much lower, right? There's many things linked to diet, lifestyle, exercise that greatly reduce our risk for dementia. In fact, the research showing a 70-year-old exerciser's brain looks much more like a 30-year-old's brain. And so the reality is we have to be doing things that protect us. So it's not, oh, if I live to 80, I'm going to be sick. The reality is if I live to 80, I might be doing really cool, super fun things, right? And so we have to start, showing people images like I shared here. Why can't you be figure skating in your 90s, right? Turbo granny down in the corner. Why can't you be competing in swim meets and track meets and doing all sorts of things, right? So the reality is we have to realize that age is an opportunity. It's not something to be feared.
That's right. Awesome. And then the last thing is I kind of want to have you talk about something that's changed my life is when I went to my first Functional Aging Institute conference. I went down to Orlando, it would be 3 years ago this year. I went to that, and that's where it really opened my mind up to some of the top doctors and researchers throughout the United States. And when I came back to my gym, it wasn't just training individuals. Like I've always knew the why behind the what, but it lit my passion more for changing people's life. And can you talk a little bit about the Functional Aging Institute conference, where it's going to be this year, and what people could expect when they show up, and how it's going to change their fitness, but make an impact in their people they care about's lives in their community?
Yeah. So functionalagingsummit.com is where you want to go if you want to check it out. Functionalagingsummit.com. It's in Albuquerque this year. So the first question I always get, why in the heck is it in Albuquerque, right? Like what's in Albuquerque, New Mexico besides dry desert plateau? Well, the reason it's there is the National Senior Games, which go on every 2 years, are in Albuquerque this year. And so we thought, what better place than to have our conference the same weekend their games kick off. Now, you might be thinking, well, what's the National Senior Games? Well, the National Senior Games is 20,000 athletes coming to town that have qualified at a qualifying senior games. Most of them are state-held senior games, but some of them are large senior games. And I believe people as young as 55 are participating. It starts at the 55 to 59, 60 to 64 every 5 years, all the way up to 100. And I hear the competition's pretty light in the 95 to 99 age group. So, if you're looking for an event, my dad's competing in the 50, 100, and 200 in the 70 to 74-year-old male age group. And so the Functional Aging Summit is sort of a unique conference. It's 2 days, June 14th and 15th. We bring together researchers, we bring together personal trainers, physical therapists, chiropractors, hands-on practitioners, physicians, global thought leaders, people on the topics of aging, people on the topics of fitness, people on the topics of physical therapy, people on the topics of marketing, sort of a wide range approach to how do I run a fitness business focused on people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. We get together for 2 days. We've got 44 sessions over 2 days. And it's just a fabulous event, right? Because we get together with other studio owners just like Brian at Boomer Fitness, right? We got studio owners from all over North America. We've even got at least one coming in from Australia that I know of so far. And people just come together and share knowledge and information and their passion for why aging is such a huge opportunity, right? Why people are going to be training in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so we got to be prepared for that. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a great 2 days. We will get out and take in some of the National Senior Games either on Saturday night after our conference or Sunday morning, the day after, because those games kick off the same weekend as our event.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dan Richie, for taking the time out of your day. I appreciate everything you do, and I'm glad our paths crossed, and you changed my mindset a lot of making a difference in people's life around me, inspired me to train my clients differently so they can live a better quality life. So thank you for your time today.
Yeah,
I'm very grateful.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Yep, my pleasure.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You too.